Next, on Currents News, help for those who lost loved ones to COVID-19.
Families here at Our Lady of Sorrows are starting to apply to FEMA for funeral reimbursement after the loss of a loved one from COVID-19. I'm Jessica Easthope, and that's ahead.
Plus, the abortion pill is now available by mail, but a leading archbishop says women's lives are more at risk than ever. Then, answering the call, young men attend Bishop DiMarzio's retreat on vocations. And
sister, she's like one of my best friends. Like, she's just so loving and kind.
Talk about putting faith into action. Sister Mary Stephen is changing lives, one kid at a time. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. The lines are open and people from across the country who lost loved ones to COVID-19 are now contacting FEMA, hoping to get reimbursed for their funeral costs. Currents News' Jessica Easthope spoke to one of them, a parishioner at Our Lady of Sorrows in Corona, one of the hardest hit neighborhoods in the city.
Jennifer Perez is in nursing school, hoping to become one of the people who helped her dad, Gabriel, in the final days of his battle with COVID-19.
I still believe I'll still see him walking around, but he's gone.
After Gabriel's death on March 22nd, Jennifer and her family were devastated, and financially, her dad's death was taking an unimaginable toll. It cost $12,000 for his cremation.
We just put whatever we had together to give him a proper goodbye. It was a lot. We actually, some friends actually were helping us with money.
When FEMA's funeral reimbursement plan was rolled out, they started gathering receipts, contracts, and Gabriel's death certificate.
It's like reliving the situation again. It makes it just feel more real that he's gone.
But Jennifer's not alone.
You still have to see the cause of death, the time of death, where, and everything. You're basically reliving that moment again.
Our Lady of Sorrows has had at least 100 parishioners die of COVID-19. Catherine Matute is the parish's FEMA case manager. She's only 17, but Father Manuel de Jesus Rodriguez is trusting her with a big responsibility.
Catherine is perfectly bilingual. She's a wonderful communicator. She engages with people very easily, and she's a perfect fit for this.
Though the parish bookkeeper and Father Manuel will be overseeing Catherine's work, she says now is her time to prove herself.
Age does put, some pressure because you want to make sure you're doing everything right. Your age shouldn't be, a reason to not trust you.
More than 1 million people called the FEMA hotline on the first day it opened. Father Manuel says he was expecting cases to come flooding in, but his parishioners are skeptical.
They don't think they will meet the requirements, or they won't be able to prove the COVID status of the beloved one who passed away.
Jennifer's dad's death certificate listed COVID-19, but the church is now working with Elmhurst Hospital to help parishioners change any inaccurate death certificates before they apply to FEMA. In Corona, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
For more information on how you can be reimbursed for funeral expenses, call the COVID-19 Funeral Assistance Line at 844-684-6333, Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, or visit FEMA's website at fema.gov. Italian Americans are outraged after New York's Christopher Columbus statue was tagged with graffiti. The vandalism happened just weeks after the NYPD removed protective barriers from around the Columbus Circle statue. The Italian American icon has been targeted over the past year as protesters denounced Columbus for his alleged negative treatment of Native people. But the Catholic fraternal organization, the Knights of Columbus, believes damaging icons of Columbus is not the way, saying in a statement, "We believe that society must have civil debate on serious issues and social challenges and not settle differences with violence and destruction. This attack on the statue of Christopher Columbus is very unfortunate and only makes real dialogue more difficult. We condemn this act of vandalism as a crime against all who cherish democracy and mutual respect." Pro-life groups are criticizing the federal government after it just made getting an abortion easier. The Biden administration is now temporarily allowing women to get the abortion pill through the mail because of the pandemic. The women will still have to see a doctor, although not in person. The FDA says after a virtual visit through telemedicine, the abortion pill could be prescribed remotely and mailed to women who could then terminate their pregnancy at home. Pro-life groups like March for Life say chemical abortions via telemedicine will put women in grave danger. Joining us now to talk about the effect this new policy will have on society is Archbishop Joseph Naumann of Kansas City in Kansas, who is chairman of the USCCB Pro-Life Committee. And Archbishop Naumann, first I'd like to read part of the statement you issued in response to this. You wrote, quote, "By pushing women away from medical oversight, abortion advocates are luring women into isolated, unsafe, and medically unwise decisions." So how does this policy put women at risk?
Well, Christine, thanks again for allowing me to visit with you and your viewers. You know, I think whenever we reduce the medical precautions around an abortion, we're putting women at risk. And I think this whole idea of trying to do this through the mail without any kind of medical supervision is very, very dangerous to women. There are certain things that they can't really check for themselves, like how far along the pregnancy is, because that has a significant impact on its safety. Also, if there's an RH incompatibility with the child, these are things that doctors need to check for the health of the women. Of course, every abortion destroys a human life, and and it's a false solution. We're trying to make it more convenient, more easier, but riskier for women. And of course, it always ends up with a fatal outcome for the child. So it's bad for the mother and for the child.
Yeah, you know, many states actually prohibit the use of telemedicine appointments for abortion, and those laws will remain in effect. But many health experts are hoping this rule change for the other states becomes permanent and expands access to abortion care. What does this mean for Catholics?
Well, I mean, I think it means that we have to ramp up our efforts to surround women with the support that they need to do what's really in their heart, which is to choose life for their child. The abortion industry wants to pit women against their children and to say that the woman's interest is really best served by the destruction of her child. And that's never the case. And so women are hurt oftentimes physically, they're hurt emotionally, and certainly hurt spiritually by every abortion. So we need to do our best, and we have this initiative, Walking with Moms in Need, to ramp up our efforts as the Catholic community to surround these women with difficult pregnancies, surround them with support and love.
And how do you think this will affect the abortion rate that's already so high in the country?
Yeah, I mean, I think we know that surgical abortions have gone down, but simultaneously, these chemical abortions have gone up. It's a very difficult process for the woman, and to undergo this alone is unconscionable, I think. But it exposes the abortion industry really doesn't care about the health of women.
So scary. Archbishop Joseph Naumann of Kansas City and chairman of the USCCB Pro-Life Committee. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks, Christine. God bless.
Soon it will be the jury's turn in the case of Minnesota versus former police officer Derek Chauvin. The prosecutors and the defense making their closing arguments Monday. Camila Bernal takes us inside the Minneapolis courtroom.
George Floyd's final words on May 25, 2020 were, "Please, I can't breathe."
I can't breathe, officer.
All that was required was a little compassion, and none was shown on that day.
Got him.
In closing arguments, the state telling the jury to remember the videos from George Floyd's final day.
Believe your eyes. What you saw happened, happened.
Putting the blame for Floyd's death on Derek Chauvin.
The defendant was on top of him for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. This wasn't policing. This was murder.
The defense disagrees.
This was an authorized use of force, as unattractive as it may be.
Chauvin's team argues Floyd died from a combination of factors, including drugs, underlying health issues, and possibly exhaust from the police vehicle. But it's up to the jury to determine Chauvin's fate. If convicted on the highest charge, second-degree unintentional murder, the former officer faces up to 40 years in prison.
You have to take into account that officers are human beings, capable of making mistakes in highly stressful situations.
Camila Bernal, Currents News.
Now to the firestorm over California Democrat Maxine Waters' comments calling for protesters to, quote, stay on the street and get more active, more confrontational if Derek Chauvin is acquitted. The controversial comments have Republican lawmakers calling on Nancy Pelosi to take action against Waters. Meanwhile, President Biden's press secretary said the president believes that, quote, protests must be peaceful. This as the president met with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle to talk infrastructure, saying he is prepared to compromise on his $2.3 trillion plan and its planned tax increases. Senate Republicans are discussing a counteroffer that could trim as much as $800 billion from the proposal. As migrants continue to flood the southern border, President Biden is changing his mind yet again on the country's refugee admission limit. Last week, the president said he'll keep the 15,000-person cap set by the Trump administration, despite his previous promise to increase the limit to 62,500. But after receiving backlash from Democrats over the weekend, the president now says he will increase the refugee cap by mid-May, but did not say by how much. On Tuesday's newscast, we'll have an inside look at the situation at the southern border. National correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, John Lavenberg, will be there and will join us with a full report. It's a milestone in the fight against COVID. All adults 16 and older are now eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine in the United States and Puerto Rico. This as Governor Andrew Cuomo just announced that more of New York is opening up. Starting next Monday, museum and zoo capacity will be raised to 50%, movie theater capacity to 33%. And by mid-May, large indoor arenas will be able to operate at 25% capacity. Right now, half of all adults here in the U.S. have received at least one dose of the vaccine. That's according to the latest data from the CDC, which says more than 209 million total doses have been administered. 25% of the population is fully vaccinated. And as the U.S. reaches this key vaccination stage, Dr. Anthony Fauci says the pause on the Johnson & Johnson shot will likely end by Friday. This as the COVID vaccine manufacturer is coming under fire for falsely claiming other vaccines made by Pfizer and Moderna also caused blood clots. The J&J shot is the only one authorized in the U.S. with reports of blood clots. There's a lot more news headed your way. Coming up, the 91-year-old nun who cannot be stopped, how the school principal is braving the pandemic for her students. Plus,
an important retreat happening in Long Island, one that allows young men to ask the question, will they become a priest? I'm Emily Druby, that's ahead.
And we travel back in time to see the brilliant light show Michelangelo created for the tomb of Pope Julius II.
There are now some big changes to the Tablet website. You can get personalized access to the Catholic news you value. Sign up for free at thetablet.org.
During the pandemic, many people opted to work from home, especially those over a certain age because of the increased risk. But a 91-year-old nun in Westchester was not one of those people. She showed up every day, ready to inspire. Currents News' Emily Druby traveled to Elmsford to share her story.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, sister. Almost 10,000 good mornings for Sister Mary Stephen Healy at this Elmsford, New York school. 55 years as the principal of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, nothing can stop her from being there for her students, not even a pandemic. Throughout the school year, with the threat of COVID looming, the 91-year-old still walked these halls daily because it's the place she knew she needed to be.
Well, I guess I have a lot of those moments when I really believe that, you know, I'm in the right place at the right time.
It was a nerve-wracking sight for the students that love her.
I was kind of worried for her, to be honest. I didn't want anything bad to happen.
But it doesn't come as a surprise to those who know her, like Superintendent of Schools Michael Deegan.
A compassionate, devoted woman who frankly puts the needs of the children before the needs of anyone else, including herself.
Compassion. It's a word Sister Mary knows well. She spent 74 years with the Congregation of the Religious of the Divine Compassion.
No matter who you are, she just accepts you for who you are.
When I met her, I realized I was meeting somebody special.
She's like one of my best friends. Like, she's just so loving and kind, and she has helped me throughout so many rough obstacles in my life.
Sister Mary doesn't realize how inspirational she is, humble and self-effacing. She never talks about herself or her accomplishments. Instead, she praises her teachers and muses over how to help her students deal with the pandemic.
So many people tell you, oh, children are so resilient. Yes, they're resilient, but I can tell you from the lowest grade up, these children are very much affected by what has happened.
But her presence and strength through the storm has created a stability for these kids. One students tell me they hope to keep for a long time.
How long are you going to stay here?
Only God knows that. I can't predict that, but I think I'll know, and I think he'll help me.
In Elmsford, New York, Emily Druby, Currents News.
Very lucky students there. For the first time in weeks, Pope Francis greeted the faithful from his famous window at the Apostolic Palace. A recent spike in COVID-19 cases in Italy caused the Holy Father to take his usual audiences and prayers inside, broadcasting live from the Palace Library. The Holy Father greeted the pilgrims with a smile and wave, saying he missed the public showing and thanked them for coming. The Pope then focused his attention on the rising tensions between Ukraine and Russia.
Per favore, auspico fortemente che si eviti l'aumento della tensione e al contrario si pongano gesti capaci di promuovere la fiducia reciproca e favorire la riconciliazione e la pace, tanto necessarie a tanto desiderate.
The Holy Father asked the faithful in the square and those watching online to then join him in praying for the people in those countries. A country and a family said goodbye to Prince Philip this weekend as England's Duke of Edinburgh was laid to rest.
In the name of Jesus Christ, who suffered for thee, in the name of the Holy Spirit, who strengtheneth thee.
The intimate service of only 30 people was held at St. George's Chapel on the grounds of Windsor Castle. At the same time as the service, Vatican official Archbishop Paul Gallagher was also memorializing the late prince, the Holy See's Secretary for Relations, speaking at All Saints Anglican Church. This past weekend, young men from all over the Diocese of Brooklyn traveled to Long Island for the annual Bishop's Vocational Retreat. It's a weekend where boys in high school or older consider whether God may be calling them to the priesthood. Emily Druby spoke with Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio, who called it the largest group he's ever seen.
With the help of the Blessed Virgin Mary.
Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio's annual vocational retreat has meant everything to Mauricio Mayan.
I was able to pray in silence, meditate a lot, hear God's calling.
It's helped strengthen his decision to, God willing, enter the seminary next year.
You get to concentrate a lot, you get to pray quietly, you get to adore Christ more. You also get to listen and understand other people's story.
Mauricio's story, he was born before hitting the 7-month mark, very premature, but despite the odds, he survived. He believes it's because God has a path laid out for him, one that leads to the priesthood.
Remember, Lord, your church
This is his second year at the bishop's vocational retreat. Normally in Douglaston, moved this year to the Seminary of the Immaculate Conception in Long Island to maintain social distancing. It's a weekend where high school boys and those older can consider whether God may be calling them to the priesthood. It's a particularly inspiring year.
This is the largest number we've ever had in my 17 years, and we did this almost every year. And so 42 is a lot. We usually have 25, 30, maybe not 42.
Surprising in a pandemic, and just months after the Vatican released data showing the growing priest shortage across the world. However, bishops in the U.S. are reporting steady enrollment over the last decade.
It's moments like this that give me hope.
Father Christopher Bethge, the vocation director for the Diocese of Brooklyn, says sometimes you just need to ask the question, would you become a priest?
Well, Bishop always reminds us that if people are not asked, they can never respond. So it's important this weekend to ask the question. And once you plant the seed, you allow God to do the rest of the work.
People are thinking about it when they see other people, 40 other people here with them. They recognize, well, it's not only me thinking about it, there's other people too.
For Mauricio, this weekend is doing just that.
I come forward more of a prepared mentality of what I'm looking forward, what I'm supposed to do, what I have to do.
We'll just have to see where God's calling leads him. In Lloyd Harbor, Long Island, Emily Druby, Currents News.
Still to come on Currents News, an accomplishment that's out of this world. NASA conquering the skies of Mars with the help of perseverance and ingenuity. And taking a Renaissance masterpiece to the next level. A look at how Michelangelo harnessed the power of the sun in his statue of Moses. It's the little helicopter that could, and it's just completed its first big mission. NASA's Ingenuity helicopter successfully flew and landed on Mars Monday morning, the first aircraft ever to do that on another planet. And the folks at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory couldn't be happier. They're now set to receive and analyze data from the landing. It's a Michelangelo masterpiece that brings art and natural light together in a brilliant display. Claudia Torres takes us to the Basilica of St. Peter in Chains in Rome to witness the master still at work.
This Renaissance masterpiece in the Basilica of San Pietro in Vincoli in Rome brings together the brilliance of the sun and the brilliance of the artist to create a unique and dynamic display of sculpture in natural light. It's the tomb of Pope Julius II. Architect and restorer Antonio Forcellino explains that in 1542, Michelangelo chose to modify the piece. It was the artist's way of sharing his position on the debate between Lutherans and counter-reformers going on at the time. Representations of charity and faith flank the statue of Moses, which dominates the center of the piece. The counter-reformers said good works were necessary. Michelangelo's position, which is expressed in this monument, is different. It's a position of mediation. The piece was created in such a way that in the evenings around the spring equinox, rays of sunlight slant through the windows and between the columns in the basilica to illuminate the different figures in succession, a phenomenon reminiscent of a theatrical production. A full understanding of this monument comes in the evenings around Easter, during which, thanks to the sun's position, as we can see in these figures, charity and good works are transformed into light, thanks to Michelangelo's genius. Recent studies suggest that this is exactly what Michelangelo intended when he decided to harness the sun to create this timeless work of art.
So beautiful. That was Claudia Torres reporting from Rome. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.